Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the session. This is obviously a follow-on on last week's session regarding sanitary ware. Right, so here's our questions that was posted, and I combined the first two questions because it deals with the same topic. Right, so the first one says, cistern bolts should be stainless steel or brass. The mild steel roll bolts rust and crack the cisterns. En dan in Afrikaans, as jy die cistern vasmaak, roes die skroewe, as jy hom moet losmaak, na 'n paar jaar kan jy nie. So, if you will allow me, let me just get into that one. Guys, it's quite obvious that mild steel cannot be used. I think the safe way to address this is either stainless steel, brass, or you also get screws that are galvanized, which will obviously last longer, but I mean, there's no guarantee that these things will last a lifetime. So I think you have to look at the application and go with the best material for your application.
Yes, it all goes about galvanic action as well. And if you're looking at your galvanized bolts, then obviously it depends on the thickness of the coating. And at the coast, I wouldn't recommend it either. But brass, yes, definitely is the way to go. And stainless steel also corrodes, and also on the galvanic scale, they're all different. So you have different grades of stainless steel. So be careful of stainless steel. If you're not sure about the grade, they also corrode.
Yeah, I think in most instances on this one, people tend to use the let's call it plastic, what do you call it? Plastic insert that goes into the wall, the plug, and then screw something in. So again, as you say, Marius, maybe the guys must just look at the application and what goes with it, so that you don't have that galvanic action. Right. Then the second one, with regards to bracketing, what is the standard spacing of hanger brackets for 100mm GMS water pipe?
If we look at SANS 10252 Part 1, the standard for water installations, Table 21, or the whole Table 21 refers to metallic pipes and the actual recommended spacing of these fixtures or supports. The one line that deals with that 100mm galvanized mild steel pipe would be bigger than 65 and smaller than 150. So if you look at Table 21 and 10252 Part 1, you'll see that non-vertically, in other words 45 or horizontal, the recommendation is 4 meters apart, and vertically you can have 4.5 meters. Having said that, if you consider, I did a little research on galvanized pipes last night. If you look at the weight per meter on a medium duty galvanized pipe, you're looking at about 10.6 kilos per meter, and you still need to add the 25 kilograms worth of water that goes into that portion of pipe. If you're looking at a 4-meter section, you're running around 65 to 70 kilos worth of weight. So yes, the standard says 4 meters apart. That is the spacing. I would be more concerned, the question was about fitting it to the soffit. I would be more concerned about the actual fitting or the actual product being used to suspend that. The 4 meters, obviously your galvanized pipe is not going to deform or shape or sag or anything like that. It's more a question of making sure that on that 4 meter stretch or that 4 meter opening, that you actually have enough support to keep it up there. So I would be more concerned about the type of fixture, and whether it be a nail-in anchor or whatever you're using, making sure that the bracket stays up there is of a bigger concern. Just as a side note, these pipes do come in 6 meter lengths. We used to go collar, center, collar, which breaks it down to 3 meter, and when you're turning fitting or thread into socket or thread into fitting, at least you have support right there at the socket. So yeah, the maximum would be 4, but suggest center is about 3, so you could go anything from 3 to 4 meter without any problem.
Right, thanks, Adrian. So the next one, some baths are supplied with a flexible waste pipes. May we use them, or should it be a solid 50 mil? Now, I don't know, Adrian, have you got something here? I'm actually sitting and looking at the standard there.
Now, let's start off by saying that the SANS 10400 Part P, the drainage regulation that the building control uses to assess your work and to sign it off, there's a requirement in 4.18.1b that says a discharge pipe shall not be deformed in any way. So if you're looking at a flexible hose or flexible waste, I've seen these things, they're like heavy duty hose pipes. If there's any possibility of that thing deforming or losing its shape or its gradient or the line that goes from that sanitary fixture to the outside, please do not use them. When we're talking about the a solid 50 mil, if we look at the standards, there are two ways or two means of checking compliance for a waste pipe. The one is SANS 967, which is a UPVC soil waste vent pipe and pipe fittings. That's a standard for the normal one that we all use. And then of course there's the HDPE system that currently does not have any SANS listing. The big thing, both of them being solid, not being able to misshape, or so if you set the bath and this thing happens to be down the middle, or the cement under the bath moves around, you don't want that thing to be affected in any way by that flexible hose. In the same breath, sorry if I can just add that on there, there's this new scourge that we do audits or we run into new fits or new builds, and there are these traps that look like pool cleaners, those flexible things with two rubber heads or two nozzles at the tip with a hose clamp. Those are also not acceptable. There's a standard for water trap that is 1321. It requires a smooth inner bore, and it also needs to be able to, you need to be able to take it apart, or you need to be able to split it in two and work on it and clean it up. So when it comes to the waste pipes and the traps, the same thing applies. If it's flexible, obviously it's got to have ribs in it, or it's got to have like those little indentations that would actually collect stuff. So we don't want any of that.
Gerry, can I come in there?
Sure, Marius.
I think on a practical note, the challenges the guys have out there is with the client supplying them with these loose standing baths, and they do come with those Corsetina type plastic traps. On a practical note, what I have done is to replace them with just a normal rubber trap, which is quite flexible. So when you actually doing the installation, you make sure that you have a lot of movement if your pipe goes underground, so that that trap can actually sort of move up at least about 100 millimeters by pulling it. So if you are elevating your bathtub with like 2 bricks off the ground, you can actually lie flat down there and then still connect it to the waste, and then just drop it and it will fit into place again. So there is ways of overcoming that. So just think out of the box. If you can lift the bath a little bit and then you place it back in its position, and then it will fit. I know they have a sort of a fitment which is not available here, where you can actually just plug it in, so you have a waste fitting in the bath in the floor. But that's something we can maybe talk to the manufacturers looking into to do. But yes, it is something we can overcome and fix. We must just think out of the box a bit.
Thanks, Marius. On that point, that rubber trap that you're referring to, it needs to comply to the same 1321. It's just part 2 for rubber trap. So yes, you'll still be using a compliant fitting to get the water out there. So
excellent. Right, guys, let's go to the next one. And I know we had this question last week. Let me read the question with regards to the concertina. I'm sure I've run installations where the old and new toilet height differs. Often where the new toilet outlet is higher than the old one. As a result, even with an offset pan, you can't meet the drain connection. What would be your recommendation there? So Steve, if you can maybe come in. I know you did address this last week, but if we could just get an answer there as well, please.
Yeah, I think let's just be very clear. There are situations where you are going to come and you are going to have that. So and going to that concertina is possibly the last resort. Like I said last week, in terms of compliance, that product isn't. It solves a problem. But where we're finding it more and more is that, you know, because the plumber hasn't measured correctly or hasn't set out correctly, that now becomes a problem, and it's now the solution that's becoming more the norm than the abnorm. So I think just be very careful in terms of that. You know, where on new builds especially, we're finding these flexible connections being utilized because of incorrect setting out or whatever is there. We've seen it with some old buildings where the cast iron, for example, or, you know, the additional pipework that's there, changing the pan, so it becomes a solution to the problem. If you've made the client aware of it and there is no other alternative and you can do that, then you just make sure that you note that non-compliance. But to go to that as the absolute norm will certainly create a problem.
So question number 5, in stabling the bath with sand, how high should one go before the sand interferes with the inspection chamber? I know this question also was raised last week and we did address it. Guys, I think the important thing here is you have to have a look at the manufacturer's installation specification. And what most people do is they build, let's call it a retaining wall, where your trap connection and everything is basically separated from the rest of the installation. So again, I think look at the manufacturer's installation specifications and do it according to that, because you don't want the whole cube of sand in there, which is going to be obviously a problem. So basically most of them says you have to basically put a heap, let's say 3 or 4 heaps on over the length of the bath at the bottom, and then push it down so that it can settle. I don't know if there's anybody else, Marius, Adrian, whether you want to add something there as well.
No, I think something about the sand as well, what they have to be careful is they must make very sure that the sand can't move away, because the sand obviously settles down and then you have no support under the bathtub. So when doing this, they must make sure that the sand is actually compacted in there, well done. Maybe a better practice is bedding it in on a brick and mortar than the sand option, because I found many times opening an old bathtub where they didn't on sand, that the sand is not in contact with the bathtub anymore. But yes, it is a method that you can use, but not the best method. Brick and mortar is the better one.
I was just going to say it must be a Gauteng thing, because the guys along the coast, we use Daga, so we set it, it doesn't move. So good luck for the oaks up in GP then.
Now, so what happens is I came across 3 different ways of doing that. The one was river sand on its own. The other one was a mixture of river sand and cement, which would obviously harden, you know, in a fairly short time, and then the concrete mix. So yes, my recommendation would also be to either go with the river sand mixed with cement, so that once it settles, it hardens, and then your surface is solid, or the concrete. So, right, anything else, or can we move on? Okay, I've had installations where the basin overflow could not keep up with the inflow. I had to turn the angle regulating valves right down. The client was not happy. So guys, I don't know really what to say on this thing, unless Marius or Adrian has got something, or maybe even Steve. It might have been something in the manufacturing process, or that channel might be blocked, for all you know. So maybe, you know, one should also have a look at where you slot your waste. If there's no interference, maybe concrete or something that's blocking this channelway. I haven't experienced something similar to this in the past yet. If the waste is turned correctly and that channel is clear. I don't know if the other guys want to say something there.
I think Harry, it goes about the flow on the tap outlet as well. So the guys must check if maybe they've got unbalanced pressure as well. So if you've balanced the pressure and your pressure, you've got a regulating valve on it, it should be the flow should come down a bit. But as you said there, they must check the bath or the basin waste, because I've found it many times on inspections that when I open up that waste and I look inside, you can see the putty they used has actually closed up those slots, and that will restrict it from overflowing properly. But yes, I don't think there is a sort of a lot of these basins are imported, and sometimes they most probably non-compliant as well. So I think we'll have to go and look at, you know, if the client has a problem like that, or the plumber who has this specific problem, just look at the basin. Is it an approved type? You know, is it has it got maybe made you know, or checked by SABS or something like that? But it goes about the manufacturers out and out here. But yes, they must check their slotted waste to be open. I think it's just a sort of a safety measure. I don't know how many times people have really filled up basins so that they will overflow like that. But yes, it is a safety measure there, but not always working.
Back to what you were saying with the flow rates. I mean, if you imagine you've left your tap on and somebody's turned the water on now off outside, you come back and that tap is open 4 more. Even with that open waste, there's a strong possibility of that overflowing in terms of the flow rate that's coming in. So if you're taking the average, you know, just below 6 bar or whatever, and if you go and look at the sizing of the overflow, I mean, it's there, but you know, I don't think it's even designed to take that type of volume of water in terms of that. But it might be an interesting thing for us to look at and see, you know, exactly what are the flow rates with regards to an overflow for a basin or a sink.
All right. Guys, the other thing that I can maybe also add is something that I've seen a couple of times is the installers using silicone on those wastes, and that can also create a problem where that silicone, due to the fact that the unit is not being used immediately after installation, your silicone will settle. I mean, there's always excess. So that could also cause a problem. So yeah, but maybe we should, as Steve say, you know, do a couple of tests and see what the flow rates are. But I think you will also find that every manufacturer will have a different flow rate due to the way they make these things. So yeah, that's something that we need to maybe look into for future. Anybody else want to add something there?
Not from me.
All right, then number 7, several closed couple systems do not have anchor holes. What about those horrible closed couple suites that go right against the wall, don't allow for maintenance? All of these issues are sanitary features purchased from a reputable supplier. Now, guys, in my mind, your manufacturer, obviously, if they put holes in the system, then we all know what to do there. But if there's no holes, there must be a way that they, in their installation specifications, will specify how to fix this the system to the wall. Some of them I know actually anchor onto the pan where you've got a screw and a nut or a wing nut or whatever, that you screw the system through the system into the pan. But I think in this instance you have to refer back to your manufacturer or supplier how this is being done.
Yes, Harry, I think maybe just a practical solution to this is normally, obviously, this would be on a new build. So what the guys must do is, you know, from the word go, I ask my clients, you know, when they do the foundations already, I say, what toilets are you going to purchase? Have you decided upon them? They say, why? Because first of all, I want to know the height, because they differ in height at the back on the pan outlet, so that I can go and measure it, so that I can place my pipes at the right height. That is the first one. And then secondly, if they've got something like this, then I advise them that, you know, it's not serviceable, and if you're going to have a leakage, it's going to be difficult to repair. So, you know, it goes about, you know, trying to show your client that this is most probably not a compliant product, or a difficult to service in the future, and then maybe see if you can change the client to a product that is serviceable. So right in the beginning, do that talk first, and then obviously when you end up with these situations, then you're going to most probably have a difficult time in working with them. And then obviously fixating them, the guys use silicone to fixate them, and because you have to remove that one, because I've found in some of the inspections where they have those that are closed right up to the back of the wall, that the guys have put them down with cement. So once they start leaking, you'll have to break out that cistern. You're going to buy a new cistern, because the client's going to say, you put it down on cement, you're not going to get it out there. So be careful, try and do that advising. So that's being in contact with your client from the word go when you start with this, advising them on the right product, and talk about serviceability. That's the one thing the guys never talk about. Tell your client that this thing is not going to last forever. It will need maintenance eventually. That's all. Thanks, Gerrie.
I agree there, Marius, and I think, well, there's one statement that's coming up, which I think you actually placed, is that you need to move closer to your client, developer, whoever is in charge of this, so that, you know, you need to corroborate and make sure that whatever they want to install is actually, number one, compliant, as we all know, in terms of the standards, which is. And so, you know, you will narrow down these problems if you engage with these people in time and before the time and advise them correctly. Right, so number 9, I have a problem, the audit complaining about plastic holder bats. So we don't use plastic holder bats anymore. I want to know because he wants steel holder bats. Now, I know there was a webinar not long ago about holder bats and or anchoring. I don't know. I think, Adrian, you said something about this one. Or
That
okay.
one we can take offline. I mean, that's something that will be recurring. When it says the audit complaining, I'm assuming it's a compliance auditor. We can just follow up and see what the situation is. If it's a call that the auditor made on site, we can only comment on it once we've heard both sides of the story. It might be a plastic thing running through a factory or a furnace or whatever. So let's rather get the comment from the auditor or see what the actual situation on site is.
All right, and I think the other thing here that's important, guys, is maybe just to keep in mind the galvanic action, all those type of reactions that might happen. So, you know, try and use the type of holder bat that suits that material that's being installed, and I think that's the important part. It's not going to obviously always be steel or stainless steel, depending on the material that's being used. So you will have to look and make sure that you don't create a problem with this with your holder bats. So okay, so we'll take that up as Adrian said, as soon as we've got all the information there. Then the pan connectors. Why are flexible pan connectors made? If it's not acceptable, and yeah, Adrian, you said you've got an answer for that.
It might sound funny. The question says they're being made, they're being sold. So is TIC and DAGA and all other kinds of illegal stuff, and people still buy that. The one thing that we've been trying to get across to the plumbers across the board, when it comes to material, unless you're manufacturing sanitary ware or fittings in your backyard, the proof of compliance lies with the manufacturer. So if you have a hassle with a product, you go back to your merchant or your favorite plumbing merchant and you ask them for proof of compliance. The Consumer Protection Act expects nothing less. It says if there's a standard for a product, which we do have for pan connectors, then it is assumed that that client is getting one that actually complies with the national standards. If we look at 10400 Part B, once again, as far as the building inspectors or the building control officers, it's a very simple, it's actually a one-liner that covers that whole question. If we look at 10400 Part B, 4.6.2 says the inner surface of the connector, because they're talking connectors for toilet pans. So the inner surface of that connector shall be smooth, not negotiable, not nice to have, shall be smooth, and it shall not be of the concertina type or such as will allow the collection of soil within that connector. So once you have those little ribs or you have that little wire setup forming that tube, I've got about 100 photos of guys taking side cutters, clipping their tube, still putting a waste pipe into those things. They get abused. 90% chance that if you are going to use that, you'll probably find that the guys have actually misaligned the whole thing, like Steve mentioned earlier. There's either a misalignment or there's a difference in height because the older pans had a higher outlet. So what we do is we do use this flexible connector. It keeps it dry for a little bit, but in the meantime the water runs up to get out. So the answer to that question is straightforward. We can't use them because 10400 Part P says that the concertina type is not acceptable. It's been in there from 2010, I might add, was the last revision on 10400 Part P. So if the guys are using those flexible connectors, ask your merchant or ask your supplier for proof of compliance before you walk out of that shop, because I can tell you now already they won't have.
Right,
Can I add something there, Adrian?
Sure.
Once again, if you are the maintenance plumber out there, you will most probably be using some of them occasionally, because you will find that you exactly the same thing, that you have geysers that are built into a flat, into a cupboard in the center, and you're struggling with getting the pipes out. It will end up in a maintenance issue with old buildings. Sometimes they have misplaced the pipes. So the only solution you might have is that, but that would be your last resort. This is something that you will not use on a new build, because you must sort it out. You know, you've got all the information now. It has to be done properly in a new build. But you could find that scenario in a maintenance situation where that might be the only solution to your problem, and that's when you use it. But there's a but to it. Then you will issue a non-compliance to your client. You will notify him that this is the only solution I've got. I cannot go and chop open your floor to move this toilet. There's no space to move this toilet, or whatever the case may be. But then it is in writing that it's a non-compliant product that you're using to solve that specific problem. But only in that case scenario that you would use it. That would be your last resort in a maintenance situation, not on a new build.
Excellent, guys. The next question, there are different types of baths. How is it possible to access on baths with skirts, baths that are built in where the traps are in the center? If a bath is installed with a shower panel, surely the trap region must be caulked for stability. Adrian, I think you have addressed this, but if you just want to give maybe just a last couple of words on that one.
Yeah, like I said, it would appear that for us along the coast, or the other guys that use cement in that, when it comes to that caulking bit, or when you do set the bath properly, then obviously the thing will be set for whether you standing up having a shower, or whether you're just using it in a normal vein. That last bit is, like I said, if you're using cement or you're setting in cement, it shouldn't be a problem. Different types of baths. The one with the skirts, there's one specific one, I'm trying to remember the name, but most of those you'll find that your bath will be set, it'll be cleaned up, and those skirts or those preformed panels actually slide up under the bath rim and then back down to the floor, fixed with screws. So in actual fact, if you are using one of those, you should be able to loosen up the screws at the bottom and pull out that whole skirt, or pull out that whole cover that sits in front of the bath to get access there. I know it's not always possible to get access. The requirement is to have access to those, not only for the waste, or should something break or should something perish under there, but if you're looking at, especially with these bath Nicky spouts, or whatever you want to call them, the combination in and outlet, if there's backflow in there as per the standards, you actually need to be able to get to that as well. So it's something that needs to be borne in mind from the word go. It's not something that you can just walk into someone's place, oh, you don't have an access, we'll whack a hole in there. It takes more than just assuming that you need access. So if you don't have an outside wall where you can actually chop into the under the bath without taking out these expensive Italian marble tiles and what have you not, it's something that you need to plan for. It's not, it's like a maintenance, it's not a maintenance thing, it's a initial design consideration when you start off with it.
But then, yeah, again, as I said last week, guys, you need to engage with the other contractors on site, because we all know in some instances the inspection chamber is tiled closed, or this, that, the other. Again, if you engage with the people properly and you explain to them why this needs to be there, then surely you'll be able to address most of these issues. Right, let's move on. I think these are the last questions. That's the one that I think Marius posted last week. Again, communication with the manufacturer, the contractor or the client is important, so that you know what are they looking at, and you can advise them before this whole thing starts, so we can get all of this sorted out and addressed, and your installation can be planned correctly. Question number 13, that's on the bath taps, the hot and cold position. There's quite a number of discussions there, and Steve, I think if you can maybe just come in there and just to give us a heads up as to where we are with that right now.
Yeah, Ari and I have had a chat with regards to this, and I mean, it goes back to the principle of the hot water being on the left, because of scalding, etc., etc. And the same principle would apply if you reverse the bath and brought it to the head. So we've sent out for that. I mean, it's, as Ari and I said this morning and yesterday, I mean, it's logic there. It's there for a safety issue in terms of scalding. But we will get the official confirmation of that and put it out at our next webinar in 2 weeks' time.
Right, guys. So we've reached the end of all of those questions. Obviously, there are new questions coming in. So please don't stop asking the questions. We will then address those questions in a similar fashion as we did today, 2 weeks from today. And let's see whether we can get everybody sorted out there. Any of the other guys want to say something in closing? Okay.
Hi, sorry, Gerrie. I took a sneak peek at the questions. I saw a very scary one I'd like to answer straight away.
Okay.
There's a question that popped up there that says, can uni-twist fittings be used on copper? And it is a huge definite no. The standard says that all plastic polymer piping systems, plastic polymer being polyprop, being polybutylene, all of them shall for hot and cold water supplies are approved for inside buildings only. That's the first thing. Then plastic pipes used in hot water near external doorways, that's another thing. And then it says here, very importantly, that thermoplastic pipe systems are required to be installed using the fittings and tools that are tested and approved as a complete system. The use of pipes, fittings, and tools from other manufacturers or suppliers that are not the same as the approved system shall not be acceptable. It's not only uni-twist, it's all of these plastic or generic, I call generic term, or polyolefin is probably the better encompassing term. But the point is, if it's not part of their system, you cannot mix and match, because I'll tell you something, I've walked into a building before where the guy supplying the pipe popped his head into the ceiling. He got down, he says that's a perfectly approved SABS or tested pipe, and he walked away. The fitting guy did the same thing, and the plumber asked me what happened now. I said, well, you just got rolled over. Because it's not a system, neither the pipe nor the fitting guy is going to accept responsibility or honor a warranty. You cannot mix and match, please, guys. Sorry about that, but yeah, then no more for me.
It's something that as the contractors out there and the plumbers, we need to look at things as a system. Remember, in terms of the specifications, it's tested as a system with a particular fitting in mind. So just to confirm what Adrian has said there, just make sure and ask the right questions, guys. Don't get yourself in a position of where at the end of the job you find this out and to your detriment. So just as Marius keeps on saying, ask the question of your supplier, get the information, be pedantic, ask the right questions, because at the end of the day, it's the plumber who ends up carrying the can for this. People seem to stand back and say, not our problem. So there's no reason for that to happen if we ask the correct questions. And then, Gerrie, just in closing, I just want to welcome our new president, Mr. Adrian Marburg. For those guys that don't know, that have been listening to Adrian, he was elected president of the Institute of Plumbing. So I just want to say welcome, Adrian, in terms of congratulations. So keep it up, and we look forward to the next 2 years with you heading up the ship.
Thank you very much. Thanks for attending. And I'm sure most plumbers are sick and tired of hearing about COVID-19 and this and this and that. When you go out there, you'll find that the compliance auditors, IOPSA compliance auditors, have got audit registers. I suggest you do the same thing. Keep your staff safe. Make sure they all come back and keep monitoring them. Keep making sure that you keep a track of where they were. You need traceability. So have a look next time you get a job audited. Have a look at the IOPSA auditors. What is it? COVID register. If I remember, Steve, it's just a register or a record or something. But
So
make sure you keep your guys safe.
Yeah, Adrian, it's interesting that we talk like that. I had one of our auditors send me a message earlier this morning in that just saying to advise the plumbers, you know, that, and I'm not saying all plumbers, but basically he had been to do some audits yesterday. And the client was very impressed in terms of the way in which the auditor had conducted themselves with the forms, the spraying, the sanitization of tools, etc. And the comment coming from the client was that she wished the plumbers had done the same. So guys, if you haven't got that process in place, please go look at the IOPSA website, go and have a look and see what the requirements are. And as Adrian says, you know, this is really serious, and we need to try and do the most and the best that we can. There's also some OHS videos that Chris Coetzee has put together. So there's a wealth of information for you to protect yourselves and your staff. So let's just make it happen and do the right thing. Thank you.